Welcome to this Tuesday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. Very happy to have you guys with us for this edition of the program. Although, if you were with us yesterday, I tried to warn Mike Jones. He picked 5 baseball games, 1 a total, and 4. He had his 4-dog night. 1 is the loneliest number, the old 3-dog night thing. And it's nothing like a 3-dog night if you're picking 3 underdogs and you hit them all, especially if you combine them into some form of parlay. Mike was attempting to do what is close to impossible. 4 underdogs, and then he went with an over-under total. 5 total picks released on the program yesterday. And because our name, I'm confident that neither of us are mentioned in the Epstein files. I know I had nothing to do with this guy. I'm assuming Mike has lived a stellar and upstanding life and wasn't around the private island there. All these politicians are on the run and all kinds of massive cover-ups. What we're all about, actual transparency here on the show. So here's the way it went for us yesterday. We both liked, and I told Mike that there's a dark cloud hovering over his 2 picks that I agreed with him on. I was thinking about taking a shot with the Marlins yesterday, and they were getting plus 106. They went down in their ball game, ended up on the losing end. And we also were in agreement that with Mizrachi and the Cubs-Brewers game, looked like it was going to be it was a pitcher's duel written all over it. Or had a pitcher's duel written all over it. Turned out to be anything but the case. A lot of runs scored in that ball game. We both recommended the under, and were taken out very early on as the over players were doing a Kazatsky dancing down the streets there of the Las Vegas Strip as they were cashing big tickets. Overall, though, it wasn't the worst of days because if Mike didn't agree with me, he would have been okay. He did have the Pirates at plus 118. He did have the Orioles. They were both winners. The Orioles were a pick'em game as it went off at post time. Mets went down. The Marlins went down. And the Cubs-Milwaukee game was a gigantic hit for the people that had the over. So that's where we stood yesterday. A lot of interesting stuff, though, going on in gambling. And I'm not amazed by this, but as we've talked about many times, I'm somewhat old school, and I think we're going to have to revamp our thinking if we're going to connect with the modern day Gen Z, Gen X audiences that are just sending it in on virtually everything. And the rise in popularity of in-game betting has gone to the extreme. I didn't realize this. A bunch of betting controversies. This goes back a long way with me. One of my very first interviews I ever did, I was trying to get some writing samples together before I got my first very low-level newspaper job. I was the sports editor of a 5,000 circulation daily that didn't publish on Sundays outside of Los Angeles in Fontana, California. Now, this was way out in the sticks. It was about 40, 50 miles east of Los Angeles. There wasn't that much in between at that time. Now it's a sprawling metropolis and very much a part of the suburban Los Angeles area, even though it's still way out there. It's quite a schlep on I-10. But I got started there as the result of having a couple of writing samples I had done prior to that I was sending out to various publications. And I was going to take the first job I could get, especially if it was reachable from Los Angeles, where I was living at the time, and making some reasonable money in one of the local dining spots. That was a big hit with the Hollywood stars and all of the high-class people that were coming into this place. Seemed to really enjoy it. There was a lot of repeat business, big tippers. It was fantastic. So realizing I didn't necessarily, nothing against it, but I thought, well, geez, I don't know that I want to be an old waiter. I better get started in something. I took a massive pay cut to work at the Fontana Herald News. That was the name of the newspaper, now a weekly. And part of the reason I got the job was I had a writing sample with a guy. I'd done an interview with Harry Dalton, who was one of those venerable general managers. He had had a tremendous career with the Baltimore Orioles. And at the time, he was the GM of the California Angels, as they were known in those days. And I will never forget this because there are certain things that you hear when you're talking to people in sports as a sports writer or a broadcaster, and they leave an indelible impression. And this was at a time long before the popularity of gambling was even close to the explosive level that it's reached today. It was kind of a taboo subject. And I'll never forget, Dalton is sitting across the table. I'm a little bit nervous about the whole thing, the interview. It was one of the first, like I said, interviews I'd ever done with somebody of that stature. I was always interested in the way that he approached things. He had done, as I said, Definitely a dynamite job there with the Orioles when he was there, and he was building a nice team with the California Angels. He looks across the table at me and he says, "The one thing that we have to establish is that the game is on the level." And that is now one of those things that has become a little bit more and more suspect over the years, especially with we've seen it in the NBA. You had Jonte Porter suspended for supposedly rigging results of personal stats to accommodate people that were betting on propositions about how many rebounds or points he might have in a ball game. Out of the league as a result. We've seen any number of other people under scrutiny, under the eye of the FBI, as they were flagged for what seemed to be unusual betting patterns. It's almost like the old days when I don't know if you guys remember this guy Ivan Lubitsch, who it was always arousing suspicions that when these Russian betting rings were firing off all kinds of money about whether or not he would lose the first game of the first set, and subsequently he would lose. I guess he was absolved of any guilt and never really charged with anything. But we saw it in other tennis matches that seemed to be relatively obscure, where an inordinate amount of money was coming in on a prop bet of whether or not the first serve would be in the box. And I'm thinking, how much breakdown can you do in order to go ahead and make a wager? But this was an interesting story. Two pitchers with the Guardians, Cleveland Guardians. Emmanuel Clace, is that the way you pronounce his name? I'm going to say Clace. I'm not that familiar with this guy. Just suspended the other day by Major League Baseball. I guess he's still getting paid, but is under suspicion of some unusual betting activity that involved actions of his on the field, and that put him in the same category as one of the other Guardian pitchers, Luis Ortiz. And the reason that he all of a sudden came under this regulatory scrutiny is because he threw two pitches that were tagged for betting integrity. And I'm thinking, wow, I mean, I realize people are sitting there on their app and they're betting in game, and a lot of people love it, especially with the NFL on the horizon. I know guys that have been in the gaming industry for a long period of time, and they say, they don't give a flying fuck about the side or the over-under totals. They just like to sit there on their app, make small wagers all game long about whether or not this pass is going to be completed, and firing off as if they were going screen to screen at the racetrack, just making one bet after another. As soon as the play is over, they're already setting it in on the next play. But people are betting individual pitches, balls or strikes, and it looked like Luis Ortiz raised a giant red flag, as there must have been an unusual amount of money bet on whether or not he was going to throw a ball or a strike. I guess it would be a lot easier to make sure that you threw a ball. And two very suspect pitches were flagged by the organizations that regulate this sort of thing and oversee whether gambling is on the level. And so now a second pitcher has been implicated there. So these are things. Is the game on the level? As Harry Dalton was appealing to everybody to believe that, yes, we take every measure to make sure these games are on the level, or are we becoming so tainted by the overwhelming amount of money that's being sent in play after play, pitch after pitch, that we have to take a different view of the way things are transpiring on the betting front? And then along those lines, this is kind of weird. Marcus Morris Sr., former NBA player. I don't think he's been out of the league that long. He actually hails here from our hometown where he originated the program in South Florida. He was hauled off. I'm assuming he was at the Hollywood Fort Lauderdale International Airport, and he gets hauled off before he boards his flight, as he was red flagged by some casino who he owed apparently a market to. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends who you are. Because when Charles Barkley owed some casino $400,000 or $800,000, it was some gargantuan sum that normally would have people losing sleep at night and maybe even trying to find a non-extraditable country. They seemed to treat that rather tepidly and allowed Barkley to go ahead and make good without him being incarcerated or hauled off to jail. But they took Marcus Morris right off the track and sent him to the Fort Lauderdale prison, jail there, county jail, Broward County Jail, and no bail. They're going to extradite him, I guess, to Las Vegas, where this marker that was outstanding exists. And So casinos have the right, didn't matter. And he was saying or implying through his attorney, a statement that was made, that this was a relatively small amount of money, but that if you owe a casino in excess of $1,200, once you get in the system, I guess he was going through TSA and there was a red flag there saying arrest this guy. Took him right off the track, right off his flight, and said, "Hey, you're going to jail, no bail, and we're going to extradite you back to Las Vegas until you settle this issue." I had a friend this happened to many years ago. It was the first time I ever heard of it. And I think he was into some casino for like $25,000. We were in the Bahamas, of all places, where at that time, you just the thing was you didn't want to have any leftover marijuana in your bag and have them haul you off to jail there and get into some kind of international dispute. And this guy's about to board a flight to Miami. We were going to Fort Lauderdale. It was a radio station promotion. And my friend says to me, "Hey, what happened to so-and-so? He disappeared." And I guess whenever he went through security, they had found that he had this marker at the casino. They then took him on a separate flight as he was arrested, and they transported him around the country, all kinds of different places by bus. And he went from one jail to another, different cities, till he finally made his way back to Las Vegas. He couldn't bail out until he got back to Las Vegas under this extradition order. And of course, what ends up happening, he bails out of jail in Las Vegas, goes into a poker tournament. I mean, this was a stone degenerate, and goes into a poker tournament, wins like $40,000, pays off the marker, and managed to get out of the jackpot. But Marcus Morris Sr. wasn't quite as fortunate, so he's having to deal with that. And he was saying, "Hey, it could be a ridiculously small, innocuous amount of money, and they can still do this to you." So be careful out there if you're trying to stiff those casinos on any kind of mark you owe, because it could lead to even more severe problems. And certainly, you would have to say a major inconvenience for Morris that he gets hauled off his flight, hauled into jail, no bail. He's still there today. And then they begin the process of shipping him back there where he can face the judge and try to figure out. I would imagine after playing in the NBA and even recently, he probably has the money stashed away to be able to settle this debt. But who needs these kind of problems? Wagering has certainly changed a lot of people's approach to the way they do things and handle their business. All right, the NFL coming up. We talked about that. Had a good conversation with my friend Jason Cole. I was lambasted, crucified by the people that follow this program as a bunch of shorts were put out and on Instagram. My statement last year when we started the program that you are criminally insane if you're betting preseason football. Now, people will argue with this, and I know you guys are jonesing to get a wager down. And I was crucified because last year the under players were dancing in the aisles. They were singing "Oh Happy Day." It was like they were the Edwin Hawkins singers, as unders cashed in the predominant number of games, an overwhelming margin in favor of the unders. Now, you're thinking, as we were talking about yesterday with Mike Jones, that the bookmakers, they always make the right adjustments. And you have a total here in this Hall of Fame game of 32 and a hook. I don't know if that strikes you as being an exorbitant number of points to score in a game where you usually don't see much happening until like the fourth quarter. I mean, the plays are simplistic, very Woody Hayes, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Don't know that you're going to see any kind of electrifying passing game. The Detroit Lions are involved in this one, and the LA Chargers. Is Harbaugh the kind of guy that's sitting in there and saying, "Hey, we got to establish a winning attitude in this thing"? I don't know that that's going to be his philosophy. You would think you just want to get out of the preseason, and now the emphasis is so much more focused on those tandem practices that teams hold than it is on the actual preseason games. They really, I don't know. I mean, Mike was saying, "Hey, listen to the coaches and listen to these press conferences." I don't know that anything could be more deceptive. Maybe a Donald Trump press conference, but then there are 2 press conferences that you always listen to, and you're thinking this is total horseshit. One, of course, is after National Letter of Intent Day, which is less of a factor than it used to be with guys signing in the early signing period in the transfer portal now. But every college coach would get up after National Letter of Intent Day and say they would never go in the direction of, Man, I tell you what, our scouting people are blind as a bat. We didn't sign a single kid that we really wanted. Hey, it's going to be a catastrophic season this year. I would recommend, if you're a fan, cancel your season tickets and maybe come back next year where we can actually sign a kid who can play some football. You never hear that. You always hear, well, you know what? Well, we really think that we killed it this year. It's unbelievable. This is going to be one of the best teams. This is the best group of kids I've ever seen incoming in any single season. Always optimistic. Total bullshit, right? And the other one that is among the biggest of universal BS press conferences is when the general manager has his pre-draft press conference in the National Football League, and the press is badgering him with questions. Well, you know what? How are you going to address the fact that you don't have a single starting cornerback in your secondary? And the guy gives you all these nondescript answers, a lot of generic stuff, and you have no idea what it is that they're going to do. And then they draft a guy that has nothing to do with any of the tenets that they had outlined as to what the team needs were. So an awful lot of BS. I would imagine it's the same if you're talking about preseason football. I mean, you're really going to get the gist of what's happening or about to happen and transpire in the field. Is the coach going to spill the beans about, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to run the ball every play for the first 15 plays. No, I don't know that you're going to find that out. So I'm not sure what information you could base your wager on. Crucify it on the totals. I would think maybe totals is the way to go rather than sides. And yet there are people that swear. And I can't tell you how many comments were made, I would have to say, of a relatively disparaging. The word clown was used a lot. Jerk off, idiot, buffoon, what does this guy know? When we stipulated that you are out of your mind if you're betting preseason football. I just had a conversation on another show with a guy who's been an NFL insider type for a long time. You may or may not be familiar with him. Well, we are here certainly on the shows we do. A gentleman named Jason Cole. He's now with the 33rd team, which oddly, I believe is a website that was started by Mike Tannenbaum, who would probably be the last guy that I would ever listen to if I was trying to find some kind of wagering advice. He seems to be dead wrong about everything. And Jason Cole was asserting the same thing. It's kind of like an annual affair here where C. Everett Koop, when he was the Surgeon General, would warn people that smoking is bad for you. Jason comes right out and says, if you're betting the preseason, you are an absolute lunatic. That being said, the first opportunity comes up on Thursday night. I couldn't tell you which team is actually into it. Is Dan Campbell the type? He has to be approaching this game as if he doesn't want to get anybody hurt with the decimation that took place on their defense last year. So maybe that would lead you to think that there'd be more points scored. They can't even afford to play their backups on defense because they have so many of their starters that were hurt last year and already have incurred injuries prior to the season getting underway, the preseason. And then you have Jim Harbaugh with the LA Chargers. I don't know what his approach is. There was a time when you could look at certain coaches and realize some guys were all in. They wanted to win the preseason games and establish that winning attitude. And there were other guys, notoriously Marv Levy, the longtime coach of the Buffalo Bills, was one that didn't give a flying fuck about the preseason. And they would routinely lose every game, and then they would go to 4 straight Super Bowls. So the correlation was certainly nothing that you could deduce anything definitive about as to the fortunes of the team during the regular season. Cole's contention is don't even bother sending it in. I mean, tread lightly until you get out of September, because September is now, in actuality, the equivalent of the preseason. Since they only played 3 games, they no longer have that 3rd game of the preseason where they game plan and supposedly do this dress rehearsal for the regular season before they just play anybody that's on the bubble of making the team in the 4th game and all go have a drink and a cocktail after, get ready for the regular season. That September is actually kind of the formative period of time now, and we've seen it with a lot of teams where they get off to super slow starts and then have to overcome a lot. Cincinnati Bengals being a classic example of that, as they try to battle their way into the postseason, if they can make it and overcome the slow starts. But September would be the time to kind of, I think, just go through a little bit of a feeling out process on your wagers before you start heavying up and thinking that you're betting these games with some kind of a strong opinion. But preseason football, not for me when it comes to side Maybe the total, something I might have to look into and reconsider my opinion on. But a lot of ugliness there. We do have a baseball game I wanted to take a look at today. Now, my theory is always this: whoever wins the first game of a doubleheader, bet the other team. Doesn't matter how lopsided the first game was, bet the other team in the second game. I would think if you research that throughout the history of baseball, going all the way back to having their Doubleday, that most doubleheaders end up in a split. Rarely are sweeps in action, and you're thinking, okay, I don't care what the odds are. I don't care where the game's located. Whatever team wins the first game, I'm going to bet the second game. But we do have a doubleheader on the board today, and the second game, it only lists one starting pitcher among the four that would be out there. Eric Lauer is scheduled to start for the red-hot Toronto Blue Jays, who now enjoy a 5.5-game advantage over the New York Yankees, who are scrambling around trying to figure out what they're going to do at the trade deadline, which comes up on Thursday. That may alter some people's opinions and strategies on betting baseball going into August and September and the so-called stretch drive. This Lauer is a 6-2 and pitches to a 2.61 ERA. So I'm thinking, and especially if somehow the Blue Jays, he's scheduled to start the second game. I'm going to go ahead and bet them regardless of the outcome of the first game with Lauer in the second game against what appears to be a scramble to find a starter in this doubleheader between the Blue Jays and the Orioles. Orioles season has certainly, I don't think it's any understatement to say, been a disappointment. Already fired their manager and trying to get things back together. Blue Jays rolling. Lauer's been extremely good all season long. So I'm thinking, and I don't know what the price would be because the games, at least in the line that I have here in my New York Post, which is kind of like yesterday's news today, but they're off the board because there were no scheduled starters for the first game, and Lauer was listed as the starter for the Blue Jays in the second game. But I'm thinking, and especially if somehow the Blue Jays manage to lose game one, pour it in unless the price is so prohibitive. If you're having to lay 2-1 or something like that, you might want to lay out of it. But we're going to go ahead and make that our official pick. The Blue Jays with Lauer to win that game today against the Orioles. I will have a lot more steam tomorrow. We should be joined by Scotty M, and he's big on baseball. And, of course, we'll have some thoughts about the upcoming NFL preseason. There are a lot of different bets before the season you can make. The professor is going to dial up many of his college preseason gambles with us on Friday, so you can look forward to that. And we'll have Mike again with us on Thursday. After I warned him, I told him, I said, look, if you like these games and I happen to like them as well, you're really operating under a very suspect and dark cloud as you go into those wagers, and ended up in a 2 and 3 day for us here on the program yesterday. Yeah, you guys, good luck with everything that you're doing. And we'll gear it up for the football season. It's nice to see that's on the horizon as Major League Baseball. Are you really betting every pitch, people? Like if there's a 3-0 count, what kind of price do you get on a guy throwing a strike? You would have to think you would have to lay a ton of cash out there to go ahead and make that wager, as it's almost routinely, even if the ball's 3 feet outside, the ump usually rings up. So, betting every pitch, and that would arouse suspicion really is of interest to me. These two guys that were with the Cleveland Guardians. Luis Ortiz already suspended because of 2 pitches that were red flagged by various gambling oversight committees and people that do this thing and say, a lot of money went in on a ball on that one. So be careful. I don't know. If the games aren't on the level, it's pretty hard. You wouldn't want to play craps with loaded dice in the casino unless you were the one that had the knowledge of which way they were going to go. And you wouldn't want to necessarily, if the dealer was cheating at blackjack, just always happen to have an ace sitting underneath that 10. I don't know that you want to be betting a lot of these crazy prop bets that exist in game if you have players that are going ahead and accommodating people that are sending in a lot of money on one way or the other. All right, we will see you tomorrow. Hopefully we will be joined by Scotty M. I think that's going to be the case. So we'll look forward to that. Thanks so much for tuning in. Good luck with all your wagers. I'm Jeff DeForest, hoping that everybody out there has an opportunity, of course, and is capable of going out and burying your bookie.